They told us it was just a restaurant, a weird-looking building with no real purpose. But why did CIA agents walk through its doors at midnight, in suits, with no IDs? Why were certain airport workers banned from cleaning a public floor? Why did a Cold War radar stay active during a blackout, while the rest of California went blind? And what did one foreign passenger whisper before vanishing forever, right beneath those iconic arches? This tower was never just for looks. It was hiding something, and what's buried underneath it was never meant to be found. Welcome to another hidden chapter from Historia Unseen. I'm John, the voice behind your stories. And today, I'll take you deep inside the LAX Tower, where Cold War secrets were built into steel and silence. They said it was just a building, a pretty white shape in the middle of an airport parking lot. But if that's true, why did one airport worker disappear after opening the wrong door? Why did black government cars arrive at midnight, but never appear on any records? And why did a Soviet defector point to a photo of this building and call it America's ear? What you're about to hear is not just a story. It's a Cold War mission, hidden in plain sight, right beneath the arches of LAX. This is Historia Unseen. John here, your voice for stories that were never supposed to be told. And today, we begin with how it all started. The year was 1959. America was locked in a silent war with the Soviet Union. Not a war with tanks or guns, but a war of shadows, where information meant survival. Spy planes flew high over enemy skies. Secret codes passed through radio signals. And in quiet buildings across the country, the U.S. government listened, always listening. It was during this time that something unusual was planned at Los Angeles International Airport. A team of architects met with government officials. The idea was to build a landmark, a building that would scream the future, something bold, space-age, exciting. That's what the public was told. And the design, a giant white saucer, held up by two sweeping arches, just like something from a sci-fi movie. They called it the Theme Building. And when it was finished in 1961, people loved it. Tourists took photos. Magazines called it the heart of the jet age. Families ate at the restaurant in the sky. But behind the walls, not everything was so fun. Airport employees were told not to enter certain rooms. Some cleaning staff were transferred without warning. And one elevator always skipped the lower level, as if it didn't exist. One man, Robert Hughes, worked airport security. He was in his 20s, just married. He patrolled the parking lots, the gates, the terminals. But one night, in 1962, he was called to check a noise from inside the Theme Building. He walked through the side door. Everything looked fine, until he noticed a light glowing under a crack in the floor. He tapped on it. It was metal warm. And then, someone behind him said quietly, "You're not supposed to be in here." It wasn't an airport manager. It wasn't police. It was a man in a black suit, no badge, no name tag. The next morning, Robert was transferred to another terminal. A week later, he quit the job. Years later, in a private letter to his son, Robert wrote, "There was something under that building, something real. It wasn't just a tower." At the same time, strange construction equipment was seen at night. Tunnels were dug, but no one knew why. Even the blueprints for the building, the original ones, were different from what was actually built. Some walls didn't match. Some doors weren't marked. A whistleblower years later said, there were offices in there that didn't belong to the airport. No logos, no phones, just radio equipment. All of this happened quietly. No newspapers reported it. No one asked questions, because in the Cold War, silence was safer. By 1964, rumors began to grow. A retired Soviet pilot said during an interview in Berlin, "The Americans have a listening post in the West. It watches everything that flies, but it is shaped like a dream." People thought he was joking, but someone from the CIA wasn't laughing. Back in LA, the Theme Building stood proud. Children laughed in the restaurant upstairs. Tourists pointed at the strange arches. Pilots joked that it looked like a spaceship ready to fly. But deep down, in concrete rooms with no windows, something else was happening. Tapes were running, signals were received, and inside those arches, A secret was growing, one that even the president may not have fully known. This wasn't just the birth of a building. It was the birth of a mission that would watch the skies, guard the coast, and protect secrets from the one place no one would ever expect, right in the middle of a parking lot, under the eyes of the world, but hidden from its mind. And that's just the beginning. It was early morning when a contractor named Dale Morgan arrived to fix a wiring issue inside the theme building. He had done small repairs around the airport before, but this job was different. No one gave him a badge. Instead, a man in a dark suit met him by the base of the tower. No smile, no name, just 3 words: follow the line. Dale was led through a side door, down a hallway he had never seen, then down another set of stairs that didn't match the building's blueprint, and finally a long steel tunnel. The tunnel curved slightly and had no lights inside, just glowing panels on the walls. Strange symbols were marked in red near the corners. And the air? It smelled like dust and metal. He wasn't allowed to ask questions. Just fix the wires, then leave. So he did. But when he got home that night, he couldn't sleep. Because that tunnel, it wasn't on any airport map. Not then. Not now. In the years after the theme building opened, many workers reported strange hallways, secret doors, and missing blueprints. But no one talked about it publicly. Most were fired or suddenly transferred after asking the wrong questions. A cleaning lady named Maria worked night shifts in the building for 3 years. She was kind, quiet, never caused trouble. But one night, she opened a door that wasn't usually locked. She thought it was a supply closet. Instead, she found a small room with strange machines, old radios, flashing red lights, and one long metal desk with a U.S. Navy file folder left open. She never got to read what was inside. Within minutes, the silent alarm must have gone off. 2 men entered. No uniforms. They walked her out without a word. The next day, she was reassigned to another terminal. A week later, she quit. She later told her cousin, "I don't think that building was made for tourists. I think it listens to people, not feeds them." In 1972, a local historian named James Keller got curious. He studied LAX expansion maps for years. He loved old buildings, blueprints, and stories people ignored. But when he looked closely at the 1960 plans of the theme building, something didn't add up. There was a section underneath the main structure, marked only as Service Duct Number 4. But in a later version, the entire section was removed. Not labeled, not explained. He sent a letter to the city, asking about it. He never got a reply. So James decided to ask around the airport. A retired architect told him quietly there were tunnels beneath that place. They weren't for plumbing. That same year, James tried to visit the building, but the lower floors were locked off. Under construction, they said, but there was no construction crew. No equipment, just silence. He stood there, looking up at the white arches, and whispered, "This place is hiding something." And it was. Behind those beautiful curves and modern design was a hidden network of corridors, not built for passengers, not built for fun, but built for information. During the Cold War, America built secret bunkers, listening stations, and emergency centers across the country. But most were hidden in mountains or forests. The theme building was hiding in plain sight, where no one would expect it. Beneath the dining room and curved glass windows lay hallways that led to radio equipment, tracking tools, encrypted wires, and possibly communication channels that reached NORAD. Some say the tunnels even connected to a secondary airport command center, buried beneath another terminal. But no proof has ever been found. Why? Because every time someone tried to prove it, the proof disappeared. In 1985, a strange event occurred. An airport maintenance team was asked to inspect underground cables near the theme building. They dug 3 feet down. What they found wasn't cable. It was concrete, thick, military grade, a sealed hatch with no handle. They called it in. A report was written, but 2 days later, the file was marked as misplaced. One of the workers, now in his 70s, said, "That hatch wasn't meant to be found. It was meant to stay buried." Years passed. The world moved on. The Cold War ended. But the tunnel, the hatch, the sealed rooms, they were still there. Tourists took photos above, but beneath their feet, America's secret stayed silent. It was stored in a plain brown folder. No title on the cover, just one word stamped inside, in faded red ink, Sky Vault. And the location listed? Primary Relay Post, Los Angeles International Airport, TB. TB stood for Theme Building. The file should have been destroyed, but somehow it survived, and what it described changed everything. The file was found in 2007 by a junior researcher named Ellie Grant. She was working through declassified CIA records at a federal archive in Virginia. Most were old, boring, blacked-out pages and useless memos, but this one caught her eye. The stamp said, "Eyes Only, Directorate 9," and under that was a line, "Secure line transfer from Tower Base, Sky Vault Monitoring Post." Ellie didn't know what Sky Vault meant, so she looked it up. There was nothing. No code names. No projects. Nothing in any Cold War record. But the deeper she read, the stranger it got. The document described a building disguised as a public landmark. It said the structure was designed for open visibility, but concealed in function. It listed equipment stored underground, communication hubs, encrypted teletypes, seismic sensors. The words civilian site were crossed out and replaced with relay center. And next to that it said, LAX TB to monitor high-altitude signal shifts from Pacific Corridor. Ellie paused. LAX, Pacific Corridor? She followed the trail. Another file mentioned Operation Blue Echo. That document talked about Soviet radio transmissions coming from disguised ships in the Pacific. The U.S. needed a West Coast post that could monitor them without alerting enemies. That's when it hit her. They used the Theme Building because no one would look there. In 1960, when the Cold War was heating up, America needed eyes and ears everywhere. Satellites were still new. Spy planes were risky, but radio signals? They were everywhere. The Soviets used bursts of encrypted shortwave, and those signals could only be caught by ground posts. So the CIA created Sky Vault, a program to hide monitoring equipment inside public places. And the first test site? The LAX Theme Building. According to the file, the building was strategically ideal. Near ocean radio paths, surrounded by air traffic, perfect cover, always guarded, constant noise to hide interference. The arches weren't just pretty, they were functional. Each arch had built-in antenna lines, some curved around for loop directionals. Others ran downward into the tunnels. There was even a note in the file that said, arches to serve dual purpose, aesthetic shell and signal shield. The restaurant upstairs? A cover. The maintenance floors? Actually where cables fed into decoding boxes. And in the lowest part of the building, beneath the sealed hatch from Part 2, was something called Node 3B. No photos, no details, just one note. If compromised, 3B to purge all signal logs within 9 seconds. But who ran Sky Vault? The name Directorate 9 kept coming up. It wasn't the usual CIA branch. No public record of it exists. Ellie checked every database, but one handwritten margin note gave a clue. D9 Ops must remain buried. No civilian trace. It was signed with only initials, RC. That same day, Ellie's access to the archive was blocked. She received an official email saying the file had been misclassified and that her clearance was being reviewed. She never worked in that archive again. What did she see? What couldn't she forget? In a rare podcast years later, Ellie said, I wasn't supposed to find that file, but it confirmed what a lot of people whispered, that the Theme Building wasn't art. It was armor. Outside, LAX still looked the same. Planes landed. People took photos near the white arches. Families ate burgers in the cafe above. But if they only knew, just beneath their feet, America once listened to the sky, through a building shaped like hope. And that hope had a name, Sky Vault. But that was only part of the story, because in 1964, a man arrived at LAX from a foreign flight, with no passport, no baggage, and one sentence that sent the CIA into a panic. March 11th, 1964. Flight 218 from Frankfurt touched down at LAX. Right on schedule. The passengers walked off the plane like always. Smiling, stretching, holding suitcases. All normal. Except one man. He had no luggage, no ID, no ticket stub, just a black coat, dusty shoes, and a whisper. "Take me to the tower." It hears them too. At first, no one paid attention. But when he reached the customs checkpoint, he said nothing, not a word. When officers checked his hands, they found small burn marks on the fingertips, like they had touched something hot or electrical. When they asked his name, he finally spoke. Soft, calm, no fear. "I was told to come here. I need to report to Sky Vault." The agents froze. That word, that name, Sky Vault, it wasn't public. It wasn't even known by most inside the airport. Only the ones connected to the deepest part of the theme building would understand what it meant. The man was taken into a private room. 2 FBI officers arrived. They asked questions, but he only answered one. "You're not the ones listening. They are. Inside the arches." He pointed to a photo on the wall, a tourist shot of the theme building, and smiled. "It works. They're scared now." Then silence. For the next 4 hours, he sat, staring straight ahead, never blinking. At 3:12 p.m., he vanished. The guards outside the room said they never saw anyone leave. No door opened. No camera blinked. The man was gone. The official report? Subject was transferred to federal custody. But no name was listed. No agency claimed him. No record was filed. Airport logs from that day were erased the next week. Security footage was lost due to magnetic damage. Even the chair he sat in was removed. But whispers began. Fast. A pilot swore he saw 2 men in black suits escort someone from the terminal basement through a gate marked restricted. A cleaner said she was told to never go near room 3B. And one air traffic controller, years later, said he saw a brief radar spike, just as the man vanished. A flash. Then silence. So who was he? A Soviet defector? An American agent gone rogue? Or something else? There was one clue. Weeks later, a Soviet newspaper claimed a science officer went missing during travel. They said he was investigating Western radio traps, and that his last message said, "The signal leads to California. The White Tower hides the mouth." The mouth. Was it just poetic? Or something more? Some say the man wasn't from our side. Or theirs. He knew the name Sky Vault before it was ever spoken out loud. He knew the arches could hear. And he knew where to go without being told. How? After that day, security around the theme building increased. 2 new guards appeared, always silent. An entire hallway was closed for renovation. No one was allowed on the lower levels. Visitors who asked questions were told, "It's just a restaurant. Please move along." But something changed. One former radar tech said, after that man came, the machines downstairs picked up more signals, on new frequencies, on ones we didn't even know existed. By 1966, a new team was moved into the theme building. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't use radios. They worked below the surface, in shifts, always at night. They called their operation Ghost Room. And the man who wasn't real, they never spoke his name again, because officially he didn't exist. But he left something behind. Not a suitcase, not a passport, just a phrase whispered as he stared at the arches. They're listening too, but not from Earth. Was he insane? Was he telling the truth? Or was this Cold War game larger than we thought? Because if Sky Vault was built to catch Soviet signals, what else had it started hearing? What was under those arches now? August 9th, 1965, 10:42 p.m. The lights at Los Angeles International Airport suddenly flickered, then went completely dark. Power cut, radars down, screens off. The entire West Terminal silent. Planes circled above, confused. Towers couldn't respond. Technicians scrambled through shadows, and no one knew why it happened, except for one thing. The theme building never lost power, not even for a second. Inside the tower, Something else was happening. A backup generator? Possibly. But no one remembered installing one that strong. From the outside, its windows glowed like nothing had changed. But inside, technicians watched something on a radar screen that shouldn't have existed. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't weather. It was fast. Too fast. And it wasn't showing up on any other radar in California. Just theirs. Down in the basement level, a team of 4 sat around a glowing green screen. Each wore headphones. Each had clearance far above airport security. One of them, a young man named Jacobs, turned to his supervisor and said, "It's not bouncing back. No echo. Just signal." The object had no shape, no altitude, no clear direction. But it moved. And as it moved, something strange happened. The tunnel beneath the theme building began to vibrate. Just a little. Just enough. Lights buzzed. Walls creaked. And then, for 3 seconds, the entire underground room went quiet. Not power failure quiet. Dead air quiet. No hum from machines. No static in the headphones. Nothing. Then it all came back. And the radar? Empty. The object was gone. Above ground, emergency crews worked fast. Electricians tried to restart the airport's main grid. Power was restored 6 minutes later. Every building came back online. Except one. For 23 extra minutes, the theme building stayed active. Too active. Lights too bright. Temperature too warm. Noise too sharp. A passing mechanic said. It was like it didn't shut down. Like it had its own heartbeat. The next day, airport officials blamed the blackout on faulty underground cables. But no report was ever made public, and no cable was ever replaced. Instead, men in dark suits arrived. Not airport staff. Not local police. Federal. They went straight to the theme building. No questions. No press. One maintenance worker tried to ask what was going on. He was told, "You didn't see anything. You weren't here." That worker quit the same week and left Los Angeles forever. Later, a short internal memo was found, decades later. The title read, "Incident Echo 7, Partial Field Event, LAX Node 3B." It said only one sentence worth remembering. Contact confirmed. Response contained. Archive all data to Vault Theta. Vault Theta. It wasn't Sky Vault. It was something new. Something deeper. People in the airport started whispering. They had heard about Sky Vault. Some believed in it. Some didn't. But now there was something else. Something darker. Why did the theme building have its own power? Why did it stay online when even control towers went blind? Why was it the only place that saw the object in the sky? And more importantly, what was the object watching? Years later, a retired radar analyst named Deborah Chan gave a small interview. She was there that night. She remembered everything. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a satellite. It didn't move like either. It just looked back. She paused. I think it knew we were watching. And I think the theme building was built so we could. From that night forward, the base of the tower was locked to most employees. Only certain people could go in. The tunnel entrance was sealed. Guards were placed at new positions. The restaurant upstairs? Still open. Still friendly. Still smiling. But below it, something else listened, watched, and waited. They said it was just an architectural marvel, a product of jet-age dreams. But the night LAX went dark, and one building stood alone in the glow. Proved otherwise. The theme building wasn't just part of the airport. It was the heart of something else. In the spring of 1993, the LAX theme building was getting a fresh coat of paint. It was simple maintenance, just a few cosmetic repairs. The restaurant upstairs was still open. Tourists still visited the white arches, and no one expected anything strange until 2 workers in hard hats found a metal panel beneath the floor. It wasn't on the blueprint. It wasn't part of the plan. And when they tried to lift it, it wouldn't move, not even an inch. But the strange part? It wasn't screwed shut. It wasn't welded. It was sealed from the inside. The workers reported it to their site supervisor. He told them to leave it alone. Just cover it, he said. It's probably old equipment. But one of the workers, Luis Moreno, didn't believe that. He had been with the airport for years. and he had never seen that hatch before. That night, after everyone left, Luis came back with tools. He drilled near the edge, carefully. The metal was thick, but not unbreakable, and after 20 minutes, it popped. Just a little. Enough to pull open, enough to see inside. And what he saw stopped him cold. A small ladder led down. The walls were made of smooth steel. The air was dry still, not dusty, not old. At the bottom was a square room, no larger than a bedroom, but packed with equipment. Old radios, thick wires, signal panels with blinking green lights. Still blinking, after all these years. And in the center, a long table. On it, a gray file folder, marked in faded ink. Note 3B. Luis didn't touch anything. He took a photo with a disposable camera, then left. But when he returned the next morning, the hatch was gone, sealed again, covered with fresh tile. No trace. He asked his boss what happened. The answer? What hatch? The photo he took? It never developed. The film was blank, white, like it had been exposed to strong radiation. Luis never spoke about it publicly. He quit 2 weeks later, moved away. But 10 years later, in a quiet letter to a local paper, he wrote, there was something alive down there. Not a person, not a ghost, but something that wasn't supposed to sleep. And it hadn't. Other workers that week had strange reports too. One plumber said the pipes were unusually warm near the tower basement. Another crew claimed their tools lost power near the hatch zone. A third man said his walkie-talkie picked up a signal. A voice. Faint. Repeating. Signal open, node stable, vault clear. Then silence. Later that month, 2 black SUVs arrived at the airport. No plates. No markings. They parked near the theme building. Stayed 2 hours. Then left. That night, someone replaced the circuit boards in the lower floors. No one said why, or who requested it. All that was left was a new lock on a hallway door, with no label, just a code, D9/Theta. And then something stranger happened. A new tourist brochure was printed by the airport. It showed every terminal, shop, and hallway. But the theme building? It was marked. No public access at this time. Indefinitely, airport staff stopped answering questions. Even longtime employees weren't allowed downstairs. One janitor joked, "The tower's smiling at you, but its mouth is sealed." Another whispered, "It's not for people anymore. It's for watchers." But the biggest question remained. Why was the equipment still running? The Cold War was over. The Soviet Union had collapsed. Spy radios were outdated. So why was the system alive? Why were the antennas inside the arches still humming? Why was node 3B still blinking? After 30 years? One theory, that the system inside the theme building wasn't just built to listen. It was built to wait. Wait for a signal. From where? No one knows. But it was still waiting. For decades, the white arches of the LAX Theme Building stood quietly over the airport. Tourists passed below, taking photos, eating meals, catching flights. But few ever knew what truly hid beneath it. Until now. In 2023, a man named Harold Griggs stepped into the light. He was 83 years old. He wore glasses, walked slow, and held a small suitcase filled with papers no one had ever seen before. Harold was a former CIA analyst, and for 27 years, he was assigned to something called Project Skyvault. He wasn't supposed to speak. He had signed documents, sworn oaths, but with time running out in his life, he decided the truth mattered more, and what he revealed would change everything. Harold sat down for an interview in a small studio in Nevada. The lights were dim. The room was silent. And then he began. It was never just an airport tower. It was a net, a catcher, a listener. And for years, it caught things we didn't understand. According to Harold, the theme building was part of a larger Cold War experiment. Yes, it was built to listen for Soviet transmissions. But soon after it went live, it started hearing other things. Signals that didn't match any known language. Bursts of data that repeated in perfect mathematical loops. Frequencies too high for Soviet tech, and too clean for natural noise. At first, The agency thought it was a glitch. They ran tests, checked antennas, replaced boards, but the signals kept coming. And always, at night. One night in 1963, the signal grew stronger. It spiked so high, it shut down 2 nearby radars. And from that night on, SkyVault's mission changed. No longer just about Russia. Now it was about something else. Something from outside. We called it Contact Alpha, Harold said. We didn't know what it meant, but we knew it was real. Node 3B, the room under the theme building, became the center of operations. It recorded the signal, analyzed it, encrypted it, and when the signal changed patterns in 1965, the same night LAX went dark, SkyVault went fully classified. Even the president wasn't given full access. They told him it was a backup power station, Harold said. He smiled and nodded, but it wasn't. For years, the team inside the theme building watched the skies, not for planes, but for signs. They saw fast-moving objects that left no trail. They tracked pulses from the Pacific that came from nowhere. They listened to messages that sounded like echoes from something ancient. And then, one day in 1971, the signal stopped. No noise, no math, just silence. And from that day on, SkyVault shut down. Sort of. We left the systems on, Harold said. We were told, if the signal ever came back, we'd be warned. In 1993, when the workers opened that hatch, Node 3B powered back up. It knew someone was there. The system wasn't just alive. It was waiting. And the strange part? No batteries. No external power. The machines worked without being plugged in. We never figured out how, Harold admitted. And maybe we were never supposed to. But here's the most chilling part. When Harold was asked if the signal ever returned, he didn't speak at first. He looked down, then slowly nodded. In 2002, just for 1 second, Node 3B blinked green. Same pattern, same tone, same presence. He paused, and then it stopped. So what was it? Alien? A glitch in reality? Something older than we understand? No one knows. But according to Harold, the theme building was never meant to be art. It was meant to be a listening post, a device, a shield. You build a dream, he said, but inside it we hid a watcher. Today, the theme building is closed to the public, fenced off, under structural review. But locals say lights still flicker at night. The hum returns every now and then, and security cameras always point away, never toward. The arches still stand, bright, beautiful, peaceful, but deep inside the concrete, a quiet system may still be listening, still waiting, still preparing. And the next time the signal comes back, the arches will blink again, and maybe this time, they'll answer.